All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Fort Bend County Master Gardeners and Fort Bend County's Grow Your Own program. Today we have the full season vegetables and herbs class. And just for those of you who don't know, our joint partnership has been long coming, and the Texas A&M Agri Life Extension provides research-based educational programs and outreach services to Texas communities through the county office. And then the county office teach and train the master gardeners to further mobilize additional volunteers to serve the community. With us today are a lot of different master gardeners. Could you raise your hands just to say hi to everybody? So some of us are here to help, some of us are both here to help, as well as to earn continuing education. The Master Gardeners program has annual training class, and in the future, if you have an interest, do contact our county office to find out when our next class is, and consider joining us. The program's training process includes 50 hours of classroom lectures on all sorts of topics, all the way from the sky, all the way to the ground, soil, of course, and anything in between. And also requires 50 hours of initial volunteer time to be certified, and then each year after that there is a 24-hour continuing volunteer hours and 12 hours of continuing educational requirement to continue the certification. And we are under the leadership of Boone Holiday, who's the county extension agent, who's out on holiday today. Normally he comes and help the class and answer all sorts of tough questions that none of us are wanting to handle, or we need extra expertise because he has a lot of educational and far more field experiences than most of us volunteers have, maybe with the exception of Steve. So just a little bit housekeeping. Today's class is about an hour and a half. We will not take an official break, but if you need to take a break, just feel free to exit the door to the back. The set of restrooms are, when you make a right turn, are on the left. And then after the class, we're gonna open for a demonstration vegetable garden tour. So those of you who don't mind the heat, please stay and come visit our garden. We have a lot of different flower beds, rain water harvesting system, herbs, and raised bed garden for show and tell, as well as we raise a lot of vegetables, grow a lot of vegetables for the local food bank. So without further ado, let me also introduce our speakers. Steve Hicks grew up in Houston and attended Sharpstown when he was in new high school. He has been gardening for over 25 years thanks to the influence of his grandmother's garden on the farm. What is it? I'm sure you'll share some more of the family stories. Steve completed his Master Gardener class in 2020. So here's the famed COVID remote class. Steve is a retired engineer in the oil field. He hosts garden groups focused on charity and education. The last couple of years on his own piece of paradise.
Work.
And then we have Lauren Martin. She is a master gardener since 2016, and she is also a garden writer for Fort Bend Herald. And Lauren is a graduate of University of Texas and married with 3 children. So without further ado, let me conduct the class over to our instructors.
Great, thank you. Thank you for all that. I'm Steve, this is Laura. First, thanks to everybody for coming out. I think there were about 3 people said, yeah, there's nothing else to do out there, it's too hot. So, we got about an hour and a half. This would take a week to go through everything. So really, we're just gonna hit the high points. The purpose here is just like teaching master gardening, teach you where to go look, where to call, who to ask, and where, there's a lot of websites referenced in here. Feel free to ask questions, take pictures, interrupt, but, and then we're gonna throw in a lot of personal observations. That's probably the one thing you won't get anywhere else. So we're gonna cover what and where, and just getting this set up, as well as just what you can grow in the winter. And with that, and if you put the slideshow together, you can put your grandson in there. So, you know, the first thing I ask is who's going to do the work and how big? Think about it a minute. Probably the biggest mistake people make is going too big and not being able to keep up with it. So, are you going to do the work? You have grandkids, you have kids, you're going to hire somebody. Think about that before you start putting in a third of an acre of garden like my wife made me do. That's a lot. You better have some equipment if you go that big. And that's one of the things to think about. I've also been to Africa where they can grow a third of an acre with a hoe. One man is doing a lot of work. So, you know, and then how much food are you going to grow? I mean, it's kind of like cabbages. I used to buy cabbages at the feed store in a 6-pack. And I want green, and I want red, and I want this one. The next thing I know, I got 18 cabbages. I eat about 3 cabbages a year. So, think about it. So, where are you going to put your garden? And Lauren, you can pitch in here. You need 6 hours of sun. You need well-drained soil. Obviously, avoid, you know, don't put it under a tree. Avoid your drains, sprinkler heads. Make sure you have water available. My wife made me plant some banana trees, and I can't get water that far. So they're struggling a little bit. So take a look at it. One of the things here is you can see big gardens, little gardens. You can fit these raised boxes anywhere. When you build your raised boxes, one little hint is I got a friend that does this for folks. He makes them 4 foot wide and anywhere from like 12, 8, 24 foot. So he has fewer cuts on his boards. And if you make them 4 foot, 3 foot, you can reach in. You know, I had a guy that gave me some stuff to do gardens, and he was about 6'5", and I couldn't reach as far as him. Any questions on that? Comments? Anything? Anybody experience?
I got a question. I got a comment.
Yeah.
If you make them too long, then the dirt can kind of push on the boards and make them fall out. So you need to put some supports on it if you make them extra long.
Yeah, you just add support. I had to put stakes on the outside. Either on the outside or the inside, and screw in. Inside's a little easier. But yeah, you'll need, if you make them long enough, you'll definitely need either a cross beam or just use some stakes on board. Yeah, that's true. We could spend a couple days on organic gardening. Main thing is, here's a website that talks about the organic gardening and soil amendments and what you can use that's for organic. We're going to talk here in a minute about soil testing. So, soil testing is easy. Go online to the Texas A&M website. I think that's actually the next slide.
Can you go back one?
Yeah. You can go to the Texas A&M website. Call them. If you have questions, call them. I sent mine in. I took my samples. You take your samples from various locations. You put them in a clean bucket. You mix them up. You send a certain amount in. I sent mine in baggies. Box it up and send it in baggies. Or you can get the sample bags. You don't have to have a sample bag. And then when you get to the form, you're kind of going to scratch your head. Just call them. Just call the labs. Tell them what you're going to do. And even a guy like me, call them and ask for directions, and they'll give you help.
Just to let everybody know, the help desk here at the Fort, well, next door over at the Fort Bend Master Gardeners Help Desk, we have these complimentary. So, and the bag does help, but if you do get boggled on the sheet that you fill out, just ask, I think it's just called it's the level 1 testing. That's what most of us are gonna need for home gardening. Now, if you're getting into agricultural farming, you're gonna need a much more intensive, detailed report. But for the most part in this area, it's gonna be nitrogen that you will need to add to your soil. But I just want to let you know, those bags are complimentary if you wanna go over anytime during the week, Monday through Friday, you pick one up.
And of course, there's just various organic materials you can use as well as man-made. And Lauren just stole my thunder on this one.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine. The one thing they need, you will need, or most people need around here, is nitrogen. Nitrogen sources are high nitrogen fertilizer, blood meal, and organic fertilizers, which are often slow release. I know Boone, who's you'll talk about a little bit here, he's come out to my place a couple times, and he just always says more nitrogen. Next, let's talk about mulching. feel like we're not doing justice to soil because it's so darn important, but we got a lot of slides to get through. Benefits, you know, it helps keep your soil cool, keep it warm in the winter, retains moisture, retards bolting, weeds, and feeds the plants. There's different types of mulch. A lot of the big farmers, especially out in California, use a plastic mulch, and I've had some local people ask me about that. I actually have a machine that lays that. I've not used it because everybody I know that's used it doesn't like it. It goes down real easy. You have to put irrigation under it. That's a pain. And getting rid of it or bringing it up is the real issue. A lot of people, you can put down newspaper, cardboard around your plants before you put mulch on top. I like to go with a lot of organics. Mulch is expensive. There's leaves, pine needles. I blow my leaves into a pile and save them. I've got a rose garden with leaves from mulch. The high dollar gardeners don't like that. They want me to buy the stuff. You can buy composted burr, rice hulls. Also, I've used a lot of hay. I bought some, well, before the last year or two, and it got so expensive. I used a lot of old hay or bought hay, and you can see that at the bottom slide. It works really well. Just talk to the farmer before you get it, make sure it's not full of herbicides. And most of the, like horse hay you buy, is not gonna have a lot of herbicides in it. Herbicides, you don't want those going in the ground. I don't like bark. It's slow to decompose and can rob the nitrogen. In other words, it's just hot. Yes, ma'am?
When you say herbicides, does that include your pre-emergence and such that you put on once or twice a year?
If you do that. When I say herbicides, yeah.
It didn't include that, but you're not gonna probably, are you a home gardener?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not gonna be going out to a field and putting,
No.
yeah, so most likely. you know.
Okay. I want to use the grass clippings, but I also use the pre-emergence on a cycle.
Yeah.
And I was just
Just being curious.
maybe after a month of.
Yeah, I let it sit a while before
That sounds.
grass clippings are great.
I tried putting leaves down, but I got a bunch of roaches. Is there any way to keep the bugs down once you put those other kind of mulches
The
down?
best way to do with leaf is to, if you can, regular leaves is fine, but to help with that, because there's not so many hiding places, this is if you shred the leaves.
Okay.
Get a shredder and just shoot them
Run
out.
the mower over it.
Or a mower, yeah, but, no, and, no.
Maybe if you let them set up a while, I don't know. That's a new one.
You speak of grass clippings. I've heard different things because we put our weed and feed on the grass, right? Is that still okay for gardening?
Well, that's what this young lady was asking.
I couldn't
So
hear
after
her.
it, oh, yeah, so the question is to use your own grass clippings as mulch from your lawn. So if you do handle your lawn with, pre or post emergence like that, it'll usually be gone in about 3 months. But if you do a lot of it and consistent, I would, just stay on the safe side. Don't do that. You know,
And I just don't use weed and feed.
yeah, or don't use weed.
Well, I don't know what else to use. I've been using it
Yeah, I
for
would just,
years.
just to be on the safe side, I would just not, because if you're on a regular program, something's always gonna be on your grass.
Yeah.
That it would be detrimental, possibly
Right.
detrimental to
Right.
your garden. So
So-
stick with leaves, pine needles,
I mean, you have to put down bug stuff and,
Yeah.
other grass.
but just
that's
play
like
safe.
garbage.
So if you don't use weed and feed, then you have a lot of seeds in it. So how do you tackle that? Will they start growing out of your compost or?
I know
Well, if the
what
compost gets hot enough, 165, it'll kill that, but a lot of times our compost don't get that.
Right.
This year, most likely.
Hi, speaking about slow decomposing and robbing nitrogen, how you can say when your homemade compost is ready?
When you put your hand, the question is, how do you know when your homemade compost is ready? You look at it, it's gonna look like soil, and it's gonna smell like soil. It's not gonna have an ammonia smell or so, but mostly when you pick it up, kind of squeeze it, and then release your hand, and if it just crumbles, it's good to go.
I was thinking about that a couple of days ago. We do not have a composting slide in here. That's another course. But, yeah.
Actually, I
that's a
think
couple
that
more
course
hours.
will be in December,
Okay.
so.
But yeah, I highly encourage composting. And then the other thing I've tried this year is cover crops. And ain't that expensive. So I'm putting down, I grew some what they call sun hemp, and we learned this about this in Africa. So we'll mow this down and then just lay it down, or cut it down and just lay it down as a mulch. You can grow it. So I guess my point is you can consider growing your own mulch. And then on this, in the middle there, you'll see buckwheat. And so if you grow buckwheat, here's a shot of it. Y'all look at it or pass it around. It'll choke out the weeds. So when you're not growing crops, consider growing what they call a green manure. And it's something that'll grow instead of weeds, and then you lay it down and it'll become your compost in the future. A lot of people use legumes, various beans, clover, and peas, and of course I've added sun hemp, ryegrass, oats, rapeseed. I'm going to try some more of these grasses, but I guess the key here is I'm not growing a crop here. I'm resting these rows, and I'm growing something easy to grow that will go back into the soil as a green manure. And I'll let you know if it works. Remember that? That's what we call rain. So the next hour-long class that we don't have time for is water sources. Like we said, put your herbs in a pot next to the house where you keep it watered. Do simple things, but consider your water sources, rain barrels. Rain barrels are easy. Of course, you're going to pour water with a hose-in sprayer. You're going to have overhead sprinklers, whatever works for you. Master gardeners and myself, we're big on drip irrigation. Here's a picture of what we have outside. It's a little bit commercial for the home gardener. Yeah, that's rain.
Does anybody know why we would prefer drip irrigation over, say, a sprinkler head? The main reason, especially like this summer, is because about 30% of what comes out of the sprinkler head goes into evaporation. The closer you can get to the ground, the better. You'll save water, and it's also better for the plant, because a lot of plants, they don't want to go picking through. Some don't like foliar feeding. That's water. Obviously rain lands on the leaves, but a consistent watering program where there's water always on the leaves, that can present you with a lot of issues, mold, diseases, whatever.
I'm considering putting a water filtration system in. Is there an upside or downside to filtering the water
Before you go to the garden?
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about
City
city
water?
water or well water?
City water.
Yeah. I don't know if it's absolutely necessary. It'd be great for the house,
Won't hurt anything.
but it's not going to
It's
hurt.
not going to hurt the garden.
You know.
A lot of the well water has a lot of minerals in it.
Is there a definitive answer on whether or not it's safe to use water from a rain barrel that's come off of a shingle roof on the
So the question is, the water that comes off the roof that goes into a rain barrel, is it safe? Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even when there is teeny tiny like graphene particles.
If there's particles in the
Well, we have a new roof and my rain barrel is full of like this silverish something. It looks very chemical.
Just toss them out. It's just an aggregate, not like that at
So
all.
it doesn't leak any toxic.
I don't know if there's anything that would leach off your roof or not. That's,
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that, because
I would say most typical mature roofs is not a problem. A brand new roof, if there could be some chemicals on it. Yeah, you're right. Brand new. Because they treat them for mold and all that stuff. But I wouldn't be scared of it because it's going to be so diluted. Real quick.
While we're on the drip irrigation, we recently put some for the plants, potted plants.
Do what?
The drip irrigation for potted plants.
Yeah, what about it?
The stake that goes in, does it matter if it's closer to the stem or towards the plant?
On the edge, where do you put the drip irrigation in a potted plant?
Well, I guess it would depend how the spray head is directed, because you can get some that are half a circle, a full circle, a quarter circle. But I would, you can. It just depends how much, the pressure of the water, because you could even have a half circle and it's still spraying past the plant onto the ground.
I'd say just look at it and use your judgment. somewhere, I'd say, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Question is for the current vegetation.
I'm sorry.
For the right now the hot summer, I noticed if I put something watery in the morning, then in the afternoon after the whole day, sun, I noticed the soil already became dry. Is that means that I need to do the deep watering again, or because I wonder if I leave alone, then.
I'm not sure. Let's talk about
So,
that
no,
after.
what she's asking is basically in the morning she's watering her plants,
Yeah.
right? And then the sun is so hot
Oh, yeah.
that during the day the soil is already dry. So does she need to water extra, or how does she maintain?
Do you need to water extra in this heat? Yeah.
An easy way is just to stick your finger in there, because it may be just the very top
Yeah.
part of the soil that's dry, but, put your finger into about your second digit, and if it's wet.
Yeah, feel it, see if, use a soil tester, they're cheap, your little moisture tester. You have to look in the soil.
Since we have to water more because of the heat,
Absolutely.
does that mean that we water in the morning when there's the heat isn't so strong, and then at night when the heat is not so strong?
If you give it a good watering in the morning, which is the best time to water, for many reasons, the sun's rays, evaporation, the heat of the day. And some plants, like impatiens, if you still have any, are just gonna look like they're dying. And then as soon as you water them, or don't even touch them, overnight, they'll perk back up. But yeah, once you you're gonna get yourself into a rhythm once you know your pot site, but pots are gonna need more than in the ground.
You just have to look at the plants, the best thing to have in your garden is your shadow. You're just gonna have to go out there and look. I can't answer that. But go out and look, test. Okay, one more, because we gotta move way back.
I was curious, for potted plants, do you still put mulch in the potted plant itself for keep the moisture?
Yeah, mulch on the top of the potted plant will help with the moisture. How much do you water? I think that's what we're talking about here. Most crops, they say 1 to 2 inches, though the official Texas A&M is 1 inch. In this heat, 2 at least. And it's a judgment call. It's not a recipe. Go out there and look and figure out what you need. Water deep. One of these guys I was talking to the other day, I turn it on 15 minutes every day with a drip irrigation. That's not going to do it. I said, you're going to need so many hours with the drip irrigation. He said, well, that's a lot of water. And I said, yeah, that's the idea. Put a lot of water on it. And then test your soil. Once the top gets dry, look a little deeper. And of course, if you newly seed anything or have transplants, those need water every day. The types of drip irrigation you can get, we use a lot of the Home Depot / Lowe's big box store stuff around here. There's kits. You can go online. There's hundreds of videos on how to do this stuff. But I definitely recommend, if you want to have a good garden, that you go to the drip. And the other thing you can do, like my strawberry patch, I've got water on my strawberries and they're this far apart, so I'm not watering the weeds in between. That's the other benefit of drip irrigation, is you're putting the water on the plants. We've talked about all that loss of evaporation. I use drip tape, and there was a place called ATS where I was getting my drip tape, and they closed down. But there's some places online, you just have to Google it and look for it. But this drip tape, you can buy it in mile-long sections or shorter. But what I like about it is it's got a drip every 1 foot. So I'll actually put that down, turn it on, and before I plant, I know where the drip is. That's where I put my seed on my plant. And I've got a 1 foot spacing. I don't have to go out there with a measuring tape or anything else. This is a little weedy. And it takes a little more maintenance because the drip tape will blow around and move around unless you anchor it. Any other questions on irrigation? Got it. Okay. So probably the most important slide or piece of information out there. You can take a picture of that link. I've got some extras up here. We'll set them back there with the seeds or something. That's this thing. I've attended some courses in various places, and the one key thing I want to get across to people is on time. Timing is important. I I got a guy that works with me, and I think he thinks he can fool Mother Nature, God, and everybody, because he's always planting off schedule and then wondering what happens. So I've highlighted on this particular slide what we're talking about this winter. But you can see most of your green. We're planting in September and October. I think the only thing that comes in August, I don't know, what is that, a radish? Well, you can grow a radish just about any time, anywhere, anyway. But you need to be preparing now. And get a copy of this, pay attention to this. This information is on your seed packets. It's online. Get it and use it. I mean, number one is on time. And if you're a real nerd and an engineer like me, you build your own spreadsheets, don't even try to read it. I always end up coming back to the simple. Keep it simple, guys. Yeah, well, they're already gone, but yes, sir.
Just a quick question. Some of those plants on that original chart say plant at this time, not the seed. So I'm trying to figure out how many weeks before should you start the seed so that it's considered a plant. It's considered a plant planted, but it says plant the plants.
Yeah, that information should be on your seed packet or online, like you use Johnny Seeds, like I like to use. It will say when the plant. You should have your strawberries. Tomatoes started right in August. Like a lot of your stuff should be started now.
You mean indoor?
Indoor, yeah, in a
On the
pot.
seed packets, it'll usually say
Pre-transplant.
start indoor before, and then, or after, something like that.
Yeah, if you're doing your own transplants, yeah. I can't answer it for every seed, but that information is definitely there on the seed packet or online, the website where you're getting your seed. But that's a good question. Other key resources. So we're Fort Bend Master Gardeners, FBMG. We're part of Texas A&M system. So we have our own little world, our own website, and our own resources, as well as AgriLife. And it's AgriLife Extension, and it's gotten really confusing lately because Texas A&M keeps changing the website, and an old guy like me hates change. Here's an example. Of course, that sheet I just showed you, that's on the Fort Bend Master Gardener. Somebody a couple years ago put together a book, or what's practically a book. It's about 27 pages, and it talks about just about everything we're going to grow here. AgriLife has this fall gardening guide. It's online, as well as an easy gardening. There's a PDF. I think if you look at this, you get to that site, the page on the right, just about every crop has a PDF. It's everything you want to know about each and every crop or cauliflower, broccoli, whatever it is you're growing, it's out there. So we're done.
What's the fall
And that's for the
garden
Texas
guide?
area, right?
I'm just kidding. What?
That information.
Yeah,
is for
everything we
the
do is
Texas
for,
area. Yeah.
Fort Bend Master Gardeners is Fort Bend County. Of course, Texas is a big state, and they
Those
have
are
this
zones.
by area. There's actually a worksheet out there someplace where you put in your county. It's interactive, and it'll tell you. I have a hard time, every time I go back there though, that seems like that location moves. But that's these two. Take a picture with your phone of these two. And I think we're going to publish this later, these connections. And yeah, because we don't have time to teach all that. That's your best sources.
Kind of for right now, for August, think of it as a transition month. What you're already growing, cucumbers, if any of your tomatoes, heirlooms, or the indeterminates made it through the summer, they're going to start booming. They'll start putting on again. So this month is the month to really get in the garden when you feel like it. And get the soil, get the weeds, take out what you haven't already taken out, and then be focused and dreaming of cooler weather. And then you'll be planting come September. Because we're going to be warm-ish all the way to December. So fall is a great time to plant in this area of Texas. It gets cooler eventually, less bugs, and it's a long season. It's not as long as summertime, but a lot of things don't make it through the summer. But it will go too about November, December. So that's why you're getting some of your fall planting and what we consider winter. Winter is like broccolis and kale that love a little bit of frost on it. Actually tastes better after they've had a little touch of frost. So, just something to think about.
Just quickly, we'll be sending out a copy of this video to everyone.
Oh, good.
Okay, this video is
We're gonna kind of start ramping up the speed here.
One, okay.
Question regarding tomatoes. I have tomatoes in the spring, cut them back low, let them grow out again. Will that production in the fall be as good as if you plant new tomato plants?
Really depends on what type of tomato you planted. Do you remember if they were determinants or?
Oh, no, these are not, I can't remember what determinant.
Well, determinants are the ones that pretty much
Right, I know.
die by the 4th of July.
These-
Are they bush or vine?
They're produce all spring, continuous crop.
Can you tell me what the plant looks like?
Oh.
Is it really big and kind of
Well,
branches?
they were pretty big.
Okay, well then chances are you probably have indeterminate. It's not a determined size, they're the vine.
Right.
So yeah, if it went well and you stayed on your watering, you know they're heavy feeders, yeah, we'll start putting on. Now, I can't tell you if it's gonna be as good as your spring, the fall, or how good your spring was.
Fall tomatoes, some I've given up on, but yeah, you're right. It's like cherry tomatoes too. You have your tomatoes, you can cut them back, get the bugs off. You may get plants. To answer your question is, no, I would not start with freshman tomatoes. I mean, most of the larger tomatoes I wouldn't even bother. I don't bother in the fall. You can try, but by the time they get there, we start having frosts. Cherry tomatoes, of course, that's almost like a radish. You get too many of them. I'm just going to point to this, crop rotations, pay attention to it. Don't put your tomatoes in the same spot year after year after year. Rotate, and these slides are out there. Farmers do it, we all do it. Highly recommend that you move your plants around. Here's another picture of the same thing. I think the biggest thing about all this, keep it simple, stupid. Lay it out and keep it simple.
Okay, we're here today at Caldwell Nursery in Speak, Texas, and we're going to talk a little bit about seeds. Okay, first thing here is that we've got a new rack of seeds. These are fresh seeds that just came in this season. That's what you want to look for. Don't buy old vegetable seeds. They're 1, 2, or 3 years old. The germination rate is going to go downhill each year, and you're not going to get the success that you want out of those plants. Other thing is that this is a locally owned family business here in Fort Bend County. They're going to have varieties on the shelf that are proven to grow for us. If you go to one of the box stores and look at their shimmering sea of seeds, you may or may not find varieties that are proven to do well in our area. So what I always recommend is that you look up the seed selection from our charts, print those off and bring those with you when you go to the nursery to be able to cross-compare with some of those varieties to try to find the things that you're looking for. The other thing is, what's the difference between seeds and transplants?
All right, Ben talks on for hours. I think the key points that he hits here are your seed sources, and make sure you have fresh seeds. Local nurseries, I talked to actually Caldwell where he went yesterday. They've been going through some changes. He may or may not have seeds. He will have some transplants. He's having a hard time getting seeds. Personally, I go, and that's why we're here to talk about what we do, is I go to Needville Seed. I go to East Bernard. They're both fairly close, and they've got some good lunch spots around. And I know they get a lot of seeds from BWI, which is a big distributor here in Houston, and they sell bulk. So you don't have to go buy 5,000 of any one thing or 500 of any one thing. They got the old school stores where they got the little scoops, and you just buy what you need or what you think you need. And these guys, they're selling this to local farmers that also have gardeners, and they don't want to make those farmers mad. So I think they do a pretty good job personally. And of course, there's your local stores. There's a lot of online sources. I listed some of those we used. Johnny Seeds, I like because of their online support, their telephone support, everything you need to know is out there. This year I went to Southern Exposure Seed to southernexposure.com. They've got some of the more exotic things, like the sun hemp that I grew and some of the stuff that pretty cool stuff. So spend a little time in the evening and on your seeds. I guess I should use the pointer. You'll see the seed packet, and on the back you can have all the information you need: germination guides, dates of maturity, whether it's everything you need to know should be on that seed packet. If it's not on the seed packet, you may not buy the seed. Some of the big box stuff does work, yeah.
What if you had some organic vegetables and then it flowered and had the seeds and you collected that
That works well.
Yeah. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, you can make your,
What Steve was talking about on your normals, your seeds, those are gonna be 1 year. If you buy heirloom seeds, they can last for several years if you store them properly. So those are two different, we're just talking about general seeds.
most seeds will store. I mean, I store them. You just don't want to you don't go to the bakery to buy old bread. Yeah, right? We don't have anything on it, but storage is, cool, dark place. And I've kept seeds for years. You just may or may not get the germination rate. If you're going to grow a lot of something, look online. There's ways to test your seed. You put a dozen of them in a paper bag with a wet paper. A plastic bag with a wet paper towel, and see how many of those germinate. That'll give you your germination rate.
I used to store them in the freezer. Is that not good or bad?
Freezer might be a little cool. I don't know if that'll harm the seeds or not. I actually have a refrigerator that I keep some of mine in, but I keep them sealed. Some people say sealed, some people say unsealed. If the seed is dry, you can keep it sealed. If you have a wet seed, most seeds you buy are going to be dry. They'll be dry enough you can put them in a plastic bag, zip them up, and put them away. If you've got your seed that you've kept on your own, it may be a bit of a challenge.
So what is your germination ratio after, let's say, 3 years in
It depends on the seed. If it's a weed, they all germinate. After 10 years. So yeah, every seed will actually, and you can see charts. Some seeds actually have charts on the germination rate, what you lose every year. Again, take a shot of that. Those are your sources. And what you'll see on the seed packet is USDA plant hardiness zones. We are 9 or 9A. Where you can see where we are at here. So my wife keeps coming home with these Italian tomato seeds that are zone 5 or 4. I mean, they're great tomatoes, and she's been to Italy a couple times and really wants me to grow the seeds they get in the mountains of Italy, but it's not the same here. But pay attention to that. And then, of course, Texas being its own country, we have our own zones. So if you go to the A&M website, and you'll see these are slides that are on there. We're down here, what is that, region 3, more or less, 3 going to 4. With heat keeps going, we may be 7. And here's just another example of region 3, where Texas A&M has planting dates for these various vegetables. So there's a lot of different sources for what we're looking at here. Don't be scared. Just get out there and look. Any questions on that? Seeds and what and where and when? Again, a lot of time on why. Okay, so a little bit on transplants, tips, sources, reputable nurseries. We use Caldwell, Enchanted. I get out in the country some. I like going to feed stores. They have local growers. You can get a 6-pack instead of a 2-inch pot for the price of a 2-inch pot. There's some places up around Belleville and whatnot. So if you get out a little bit, go out and look. I don't know much about online sources. I've never bought them online. And if you have any questions on the variety, you can go to the various websites and confirm that. I've got one of the things, I think Boo's going to talk about it here. I'm sorry, I'm not going to play all this because he takes forever to start to talk about it. Here's a picture of the transplants at Enchanted Gardens from a couple of years ago.
Probably the most important thing you want to look at if you're going for the 2-inch pot transplants, especially the big box stores, is to pull it out and see what the roots look like. If they're just circling and circling, I would choose another plant.
So I've got some examples. So I actually went out. So these, these are very mature pepper plants. There's 3 of them, so they're left over from last spring. So if you were to buy this or get it for free like I did, you could bust up those roots and put them out there. You want to see roots, but that's probably too many. You guys can pass these around, and wherever they end, somebody can keep them. So these are different pepper plants. Like I said, these are mature. Here you go.
So
Here.
what do we want the root to look like?
I'm trying to get there.
Oh.
Well, you don't really want to see them circling. I mean, it'd be great.
You want to see the roots, you just don't want to see them like this. Oh, amazing. There I'm seeing roots starting to develop. They haven't overgrown the pot. But you want to be able to pull it out and see it. You got to do this to get it out of there. It's probably grown into the pot. And, you know, it's a function of price, time, but you definitely want to see some roots. You don't, if you pull it out and you get nothing, it's not a very big plant. So a lot of times they'll start these as plugs, little bitty 1-inch or plugs, and then they'll transplant them to 2-inch. You want them to, or bigger stuff. Plugs work. They just take more water, a little bit longer, but you just want to make sure you got a good start, so you guys can get one of each section.
What if your plant is in a pot that's too big?
Yeah.
Okay, and will that plant die? Because,
No.
well, what if it's a fruit tree then? Because I need to move it. I mean, I need to move it into a smaller pot, but I have a fruit tree that looks like it's gonna die, and it's because it's in a big pot for its size. But
you don't want it.
I've never gone to the small
It
one.
was small. All
Just
right.
give it more nutrition. Make sure it's got plenty of nutrition, especially if it's a potted plant, like a citrus.
Yeah, it's a citrus.
Okay,
but I think
so
it's in
we
a
had a
fruit
citrus deal, I think last year, and the citrus guy from A&M said every time you walk by, throw some fertilizer on it. Literally, you're not feeding it enough, in all likelihood.
Okay, but it's not gonna die, is it? I just.
I can't.
No.
This heat, everything's gonna die.
Well, no, I mean,
I would say keep it watered,
Yeah, I do.
not too much sun on a citrus, and lots more fertilizer.
Okay.
And a lot of people use different mediums to grow this stuff in, and they stick with lots of fertilizer. All right. Go ahead.
When you start seeding inside, do you have any trick your vegetable is not too leggy, with light, without light? Mine is always like so long.
That's just not what it's It's not.
There you go.
The question is if you are growing from seed inside the house and they get really long and leggy, that's because they're not getting enough sun, or if you're using grow lights, they're not under the grow lights for a long time.
You've got a compressed area. So you obviously, you recognize the problem that you're going to solve. And it may be in there too long, but go ahead.
So my question is, the fruit that you eat at home, why can't you use the seeds of that? Why don't they?
You can. Anything you grow at home, well, most things you can. I mean, some things you can't. I mean, there's.
It do work. You put it in the ground.
If it's a hybrid, it doesn't always work. Like I got squash that's a hybrid that I can't reseed because it'll come up different. Like I said, I grow a yellow zucchini, and the seeds will come back and it'll be a green zucchini. You're not going to get, if it's a hybrid seed, you're not going to get that plant. So if it's an heirloom, you can plant them over and over and over and over again for years.
If it's an organic vegetable that you buy at the grocery store, like an avocado, and I take it home, can I plant that seed or put
I'm running that experiment.
Oh, okay.
So the question is, if you buy an organic avocado from, I don't know, let's say Whole Foods, bring it home. I'm doing that now.
Yeah.
It's growing. And this may take years, but the idea, I've never done it with an organic. I've done it with the ones you get from the grocery store. Those don't. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember the old commercials of the cartoon of the ladies who would talk to each other. Those will never fruit because they've been treated with pesticides. I mean, they're coming from California, they're coming from Mexico. So that's seeped into it. So they're going to leave, And it'll be a nice tree eventually. But I'm trying that now with this. So I'll get back to you in about 4 or 5 years.
So one of the things here, we talked about
What
transplants.
if you graft that avocado? Because I thought it
Just once it's in the shell and you open it, and that's how I did it. It had split. I didn't want to eat it. It looked yucky. But the seed had split, and I could see a root coming out. So I thought, well, let's just start this experiment.
All right.
But we got to move on.
We got to move on, and we may pass on some questions and save them for the end. Transplants, that's where we are. Don't just grab some potting soil or soil. I use a germinating mix. It's typically a peat and maybe some vermiculite. You can buy germinating mix. Look at your timing. You start with the appropriate size pots. A lot of times we start with little plugs, then move those to larger pots. I've planted little 1-inch plugs. It works that way. Pay attention to where you have the depth, time, temperature, water with the mister. It means you don't go drop, you don't put a little bit of seed in a deal and then hit it with a water hose. You have to use a mister and very lightly water those seeds. And then the other thing is that Boone talks about is thin. So you're going to end up with 2 seeds, 3 seeds in a pot. You're going to need to thin that. So one of the things that you'll notice in these pots is you should have one. In most cases, you should just have one plant coming up in that pot. If you have 2 or 3, thin. And then there's some more links that you can grab. Okay, now I'm going to get to the crops. So I've broken this up into warm season, which is not typically winter crops, but things that we can grow here in the fall. That a lot of people can grow in the spring as well. And then we'll talk about the cold weather crops, the cold crops and so forth. And then we're going to try to get to some other things. So we got a few minutes here. I'm going to really bust by these. So things we can plant are potatoes, green beans, lima beans, peas, fall squash. Potatoes, Bud talks about potatoes for a while here. Boone talks about potatoes for a while. I don't have time to get today, but potatoes, I was talking to some of the nurserymen yesterday. Fall potatoes are hard to find. So if you can find fall potatoes at your nursery, get them. But they're typically hard to find. And I don't even have anything on planting the potatoes, but you can go online and see how to plant potatoes. Pretty straightforward. Green beans, I think that what I like about green beans is the fall is I get a longer growing season in the fall than I do in the spring because it gets so hot here so quick. So I could plant green beans in early September, put in a few, wait a couple weeks, put in a few more, wait, put in a few more. And my favorite story is we started with homegrown green beans in our green bean casserole on Thanksgiving. Everybody has to have that, right? And once you go with fresh creamed beans, you'll not use the can anymore. I say that because we did that for years, and then last November, I think it was November 6th or 7th, I had a freeze. Nobody else froze, but I had a freeze that knocked out all my green beans. So we had a very short season for green beans this last fall. So one thing about all these crops is there's risk. There's risk if you plant early in the spring. There's risk in the fall that you get an early freeze. So have some freeze thaw and be prepared. I wasn't even expecting to freeze that night. Lima butter beans, September, everything. I don't have a whole lot to say. Fall squash, there's lots of squashes you can plant in the fall. Big thing is go look at your maturity. A sun drop that takes 62 days is going to be kind of a challenge. I guess if you plant it early September, October, you may be okay, but you're shorter, faster growing zucchinis, yellow squashes, and scallops. This is a fall crop. They work. You will not plant winter squash in the winter because it takes 90 days. It's a summer. Explain that to me. So, everything likes moderate fertility. Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
What was your suggestion for this transition period before we start? Like, so you're ground already, what you have here? What is the suggestion for that right now? Just keep mulch over it?
Well, to get the ground ready now?
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I would get rid of the weeds. I would keep it mulched. I mean, the early slide I had with the hay all over you know, we were able to keep the ground with,
I'm
with
sorry,
hay.
I walked in late, so.
Oh, that's all
Keep
right.
going, so I missed
That's all right.
everything.
Yes, ma'am.
A really good suggestion for all those Amazon boxes is flatten them out and stick them over your garden soil and it keeps the weeds down.
Absolutely.
It's a great use of your Amazon boxes.
That's a good idea. Yeah, so, yeah, knock the weeds down now. Peas work. Okay, so it's not a vegetable, but I've been pushing strawberries. Strawberries 100 years ago were really big in this part of the country. Weather kind of changed. We used to have a lot of citrus and strawberries and avocados in this part of the country, and we don't so much anymore. My key point is try to get some in November, try to get some early. Last year we were able to do that, and then they burned up during the summer last year. I just had a hard time keeping them alive. I tried some transplants this past spring, and I just didn't get there. If you plant some in October, November, actually October, if you can get them and put them in the ground. You have to go online to get them. We had strawberries in January, February last year. It was really great. But I'm trying to, we don't really see many for sale here. I did talk to Enchanted, they did have some last spring, and I keep pushing them to get us strawberries. North-south orientation, there is a 44-page diatribe on strawberries at this website on Texas A&M AgriLife. So everything you need to know and want to know, you know, you got little strawberries, big strawberries, sweet strawberries, not so sweet strawberries. All that information is out there, but grandkids love them.
I've never heard the north-south orientation. Could you give a quick explanation what that means?
Just means it likes to be planted in a north-south direction.
Orientation? Okay.
Yeah, it likes that. Mine aren't. It's because of the size of my garden.
What is it, east-west, they just don't like, huh?
I guess the way the sun travels. I mean, think about it, if they're going this way, the sun's coming over the top this way, right? Versus I've got them this way, so they get too much sun, maybe. You know, they like shade, or you probably have to shade them. I have not.
I think I was told that north-south has to do with the wind, and then east-west has to do with the sun.
Okay, I can buy that.
She told me to come back.
All right, let's get to cool season, and I think we're moving along. Yeah, we're okay on time now. As you saw on that sheet, the little cheat sheet, September to February, all these guys are big green plants that most of them are heavy feeders. Lots of nitrogen. I like blood meal and various organic. I use MicroLife, and we use a lot of compost now that I've got compost growing. It's a shot of kale, more kale and lettuces than you will ever need. We take a lot of food to the food bank.
How big is your farm?
Not very big. Big enough to keep me busy. And maybe skinny though.
It's huge.
Broccoli. Broccoli is a favorite unless you're a Bush. George Bush. I've never direct seeded broccoli. I've talked to people that have. I usually use transplants. I'd say it's not too early. Interesting, for 2 or 3 years there, my broccoli did not make the heads, it bolted. And I blame it on me. I think I put in too much organic material and it was too hot. And I had a couple other neighbors that had the same issue. So if you have that problem, eat the leaves. The leaves are great green. And then you can also have broccoli. Once you get the head, you pick the head, you cut the head off. You can keep that plant and continue to get the little broccoli florets all the way through April. So I know 1 year early on, my wife said, "What is that green out there? That's the best green." I said, "Honey, you're eating the broccoli leaves." So those are good for you too, and the broccolini is good for you. The stem has got a lot of organics and nutrients in it. And again, you could transplant again late January, early February. I've tried that. I've tried it and it worked, and I've tried it and it froze and failed. So again, it's got a little risk to it. And I've highlighted a couple of varieties that we like around here. Cauliflower, again, I go with transplants, early snowball, snow crown. You've got the cheddar, which is the Texas longhorn color, and the graffiti, which is the Aggie color. And that's a lot of fun. It's similar to, well, it won't floret, but it's fun to grow. Some people will, one trick is if they have the white cauliflower to keep it from turning, to keep it white is they'll pull the leaves over the top, put a clothespin on it. I've never done that. That's a lot of work. But it's always been white enough for me. Cabbage is easy to grow. You can plant it September, October, November. You can do it again in January. It likes a little, all these like a little freeze from time to time. I got scared when Uri came through and we picked a bunch, just took it to the food bank. But again, it's the old story is when you start planting these things, think about how much you're going to eat and who you're going to feed and what you're going to do with the extra. So we, Fort Bend Master Gardeners, myself, and others that I know, take food to the food bank all the time. And I know Richmond Helping Hands, Richmond Roseburg Helping Hands over here, they'll take anything, even if it's a small basket of food. Don't be giving it to your neighbor, your church, take it to them. They'll take it.
I think the bok choy, just from my experience, like Steve was saying, I thought, oh, 5. I took a picture of, sorry, my shoulder's messed up. That was the size of one. And I wasn't doing anything special to it, just going along. So when he says, plant what you think you can eat, realize that bok choy was huge. It was
We're
huge.
picking up.
Yeah.
But yeah, bok choy was something fun. But, it's not something we normally eat. It's a big hit.
Oh, it's delicious.
It's great. Tastes great. Makes great soup.
Is it a sweet type cabbage? What's it taste like?
Chinese, right?
Well, it's just big leaves, so you can like make packets with it. Stuffed cabbage leaves or stir fries or something like that. But
It's great stir.
the leaves are.
Do you
And the stem.
Do you use any of the base, the white?
Yeah, the stem is
Oh,
delicious.
really?
Yeah, the whole plant's delicious.
The stem is delicious. It goes great in soup. Yes.
Will you be doing, pest and farms with these brassicas later, or is that not something in the fall?
Pests?
With brassicas, will you be going over pests or problems with growing brassicas in the fall?
I don't really have any trouble with pests at the brassicas in the fall.
You have very few in the fall.
Yeah, that's one other reason we grow in the fall, yeah. I can't think of it.
Disease or anything like that? You don't cover it, cross cover anything?
For what, freeze?
No.
Relief?
For pests, we're okay.
Yeah.
For disease,
Yeah.
it's okay also?
Yeah, I haven't really knocked on wood. I really haven't had any problems with pests and diseases in the fall. Maybe that's why I like the fall.
And you're going to get a lot less with drip irrigation because once again, especially on your cabbage, if you did it overhead, sprinklers, whatever, that water's going to sit where those joints, where the leaves meet the stalk. So yes, you can bring something in.
Yeah, and you may get some stuff.
But it's less. All I can say is you're not going to get any, but it's less in the fall than it is in the spring.
I'm thinking I may have had some stuff on my cabbage, but we washed it off. So maybe, I just can't think of any serious problems that we've had. Those bugs got to eat too. Growing up for this, I growing up for the bunnies. We get a lot of bunnies. Okay, good question. Good stuff. Brussels sprouts, personal observation there is transplant them early. They take a long time, but they last forever. I mean, I don't think we knocked out. I've kept Brussels sprout stems for a couple of years. They just keep getting bigger and uglier. But this year we didn't. But we knocked them down eventually. But I think it may be June or July before I knocked. We had people picking Brussels sprouts well into the spring. They may not have been as sweet because of the heat, but don't be scared of Brussels sprouts. First time I grew some, I didn't really know it was Brussels sprouts. Somehow I got that mixed in with my cabbage. I couldn't figure out why the cabbage never had it. Went out there to knock it down, I went, oh, that's Brussels sprouts.
Excuse me.
Yep.
So on this presentation is, I saw some slides that had like maps of, rotation. Is there a map with like what needs to go together, like companion planting?
That would be another topic.
That's another topic, but yeah,
But that's a good question.
that's a good question, that's a great thing to do. I think you can look that up if you want to get into companion planting. Absolutely, yes.
When you said the Brussels sprouts, you couldn't tell them from the cabbage by mistake. We volunteers everywhere. I just wanted to know if maybe that was something we need to be aware of, like what needs to go in that same plot, when we're doing the rotation.
I'm putting together a PowerPoint presentation for that, but that's getting pretty advanced in your garden.
Right.
You're just starting out. I wouldn't really focus too much on, because you're gonna learn it a little bit, like,
Yeah, we had a guy put some,
that's getting pretty advanced.
it gets pretty advanced. So we had a guy that, at our place, he put in a bunch of, I guess it was broccoli or cauliflower down the middle, and then he planted carrots on the outside of it on either side. That's what companion planting is. My wife was half stupid, those leaves were gonna cover the carrots, and they did. But once we took the broccoli out, the carrots came on, and we had some great carrots. So there's a whole other topic in class, and lifetime you can spend on companion planting, and we don't really cover that here, but you can look into it once you get your garden growing. Now, speaking of carrots, personal observation on carrots is moisture. Probably the biggest. I went a couple years without being able to grow carrots, and I think the biggest issue is you've got to keep those seeds moist for 2 to 3 weeks or longer. And I've seen people even put down like toilet paper underneath the seeds. But you're going to spread your seeds thinly. It's a little bitty seed. You're going to want to thin it, and then I guess, and then have a lot of patience, because to me they take a long time to grow here. I plant them in the fall, and it seems like the kids were digging them up spring break. So my wife thinks I'm crazy. I think that a lot of the timing on this is a little bit aggressive, that you'll see on the seeds. Look at the different types of carrots, whether you want the long skinny carrots or short carrots. Look at your soil, make sure you have depth to work with. Good loose
Can you
soil.
talk about thinning? When you say thinning, I heard you say that before.
Yeah.
Are you just taking it and sticking it in the soil right next to it? What is
No,
it?
when you're thinning is like a carrot seed or a lettuce seed is really, really fine, and you can either mix it with sand or you can just spread it. There's lots of different ways to do it. And so you're gonna end up with more seeds and plants than you have room for. So you just have to pull seeds out of the way to give the other carrot a combination and room to grow.
Okay.
And I'm talking about it a little bit more here. I get the beets. Oh, there they are. Beets are easy to grow. Seed early in the month, October. Each seed, you gotta realize, a beet seed is different because it looks like a seed, but it's really a pod and it has several seeds in it. So you just plant the pod. I'm trying to break it up. And so you will have to thin your beets. But the beet greens are fantastic in salads, so let them get up a little bit, pick the greens, and then, if the beets get to a certain size, you pull small beets, and then you just let the other beet keep getting better and bigger. It takes judgment. It's kind of like a carrot. You got to thin it out to the point where you're giving accommodation and room for the other carrots or beets, whatever the other plant is that you're thinning to grow. Yes, sir.
My beets, when I grow them, they grow out of the ground. I'm trying to figure out,
Yeah.
do you need to plant them deep to start, or how do you make them so that they don't end up with, half out of the ground, half in the ground, they start turning green on the top, and it just doesn't.
So the shoulders are gonna come up.
Yeah.
But one thing we want to take away from these are known as root vegetables, so they do not transplant well. In fact, you probably won't find them in nurseries growing, because they will fit, yes, inside a 2-inch pot, but when you take that out and then go put it in your garden, you're gonna probably break that taproot. So these are things that you will need to start from seed.
In the garden.
In the garden, where they're gonna grow. So that thinning process is, just try and visualize underground that it's growing bigger. So if it's bumping up next to somebody, it's not gonna get to the size that it could be. So So you can pick smaller carrots, smaller beets, let the other ones grow, get bigger. Once again, a judgment call.
But yeah, the shoulders are coming up out of the ground. It's never been a problem for me. If you don't like it, add it, cover with a little mulch, cover with a little dirt, you know.
So like this, I think that 1 inch is plenty deep, that's I think what they recommend.
Yeah. Plenty deep. I don't even think I go that deep. Somebody else? Yeah, follow directions. Yeah, like she said, the shoulders come up. That's not a problem for me. I don't know. Yeah, there's lots of different beets out there, and lots of things to do with beets: canning them, roasting them, putting them in salads, and so forth. Lettuce and arugula. I always, up until recently, always just, you know, I planted lettuce. I did this. You know, I just took the seeds, and I had loose leaf lettuce. I had leaf lettuce. And you just go out there and you just cut it off, and you can have a salad. Just make sure you wash it, honey, before you put it in the salad. She went out and picked a bunch of lettuce and served some company, and I looked down and there's bugs crawling out of it. So make sure you chill it. If it's small enough, you can go with ice water. Because a lot of times these lettuces, when you pick them, they'll just wilt. Chill it. Just chill it and wash it, and you'll be fine. So you can go with loose leaf. If you plant just the seed, you can thin it out and get to a head. Romaine is really good around here. They make great salads. The only issue is once it gets hot, those things will head out and get bitter. This is a 75-year-old lady that never grown anything in her life. She came out to our garden and she grew that. I really haven't had any issues with the sun. If you do, you can plant something tall next to it, direct cedar transplant. And there's all kinds of different kinds of loose leaf lettuce, romaine that grows in heads, butterhead bib we've actually grown recently, arugula, I like a lot of arugula, and I don't know about the Cranus iceberg, I don't know that I've grown that. It's not going to make the really tight heads like you buy in the grocery store, but it's still good, it still works. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
If you let some of your arugula go to seed, it will
self-propagate? Really?
Arugula 2 or 3 years ago, and it grows, I let it go to seed, the seeds drop, and it comes back up, and 2 years later, and it's just a continuous cycle.
So that happened to me with red leaf lettuce.
Really?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So some of these things in seed come back.
Yeah.
Spinach. Aren't you the expert on spinach? Sunlight, well-drained soil, everything does. Lots of nitrogen. You know, the darker the color, the more nitrogen it likes. There's all kinds of different. You can see the various varieties. Red stem Malabar. Yeah. Lauren likes to talk about Malabar. We put a line through it because it's really not spinach.
Yeah, it's not a spinach. It looks like it, tastes like it, but it doesn't quack like it. It grows in a vine. All you need to do is buy one. I think it's better raw. So the vine, you just pick as you need it. It makes these delicious, well not delicious, beautiful red berries. I mean, we'd love to have lipstick in that color. And why you never have to buy it again is because it makes so many of these little red berries and it will reseed itself. Almost to the point of irritation. But it needs to have a trestle. It needs to grow on something. I think it's better to go more in a swampy area. But I didn't know what I was growing. It was just something fun, and it grows a lot.
I planted some of those, and I had them coming back in my garden. I was trying to figure out what it was, and now it's just taking over. They love the heat, so it's just everything. So the berries are the seeds. You're saying the berries?
Well, berries are little, I don't know, little round. I don't know what size that I would say, but not like miniature. I mean, you know, like a chili pecan. Does anybody know a chili pecan pepper? Okay, it's about that size. So I don't know. Size of your pinky nail.
So do you eat the berries or those seeds?
I didn't. I just desired them for a shade of lipstick.
What was
is
half
the
of
name?
this group doesn't need to worry about that.
What is the name of that spinach?
Malabar.
Is it spinach? No, she says it's not spinach.
Okay. Swiss chard is another one that works great here. You can grow it as a transplant or just a seed. It's really easy to grow as a seed. It's like I guess it's close to a garden beet. Great cooked, or if you pick the leaves young, they're great in salads young. They handle our weather really well. I can grow it really easily. There's different varieties, Bright Lights Ruby. I think that one of the keys to this is if you just come in here and pick the outside leaves, that plant will just keep going and going and going. So you can whack it off if you like, but what we do is we just, we go to this head, and there's several of them growing there, and just pick the outside leaves, come down the row and pick a couple outside leaves off each one, and you will have Swiss chard for a while. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever tried to grow here rhubarb?
Rhubarb? No. When I was a kid, we lived in Michigan, we had rhubarb, but I don't know. Maybe in the winter here, I don't know.
I've never had luck with it.
I've
I
never
mean, I
tried.
see it every now and then in the nurseries, and I've tried, but it just doesn't take. You know, that could be. I'm a little bit more laid back, so that could be some of my neglect too.
Kale, kohlrabi, collards, all of these work well here. Look at your different varieties. I think I grew kohlrabi last year for the first time. Wasn't real sure what to do with it. Somebody here may know. Collards, it doesn't take much. You can get a lot of greens. And it's about how much you like greens. I like other people to cook them. Onions and garlic do well. Get your plant sets when they come out of the nursery. Just your little individual plants, plant them 4 to 6 inches apart. Lots of nitrogen, and especially one of the things I didn't mention, if you get your soil test, or even if you don't get your soil test, if you put some nitrogen down a couple weeks before you plant and let it get into the soil along that row, that can help as well. So onions, I like to put nitrogen down early and often, just like some people vote, and lots of water and lots of nitrogen. So, and we've grown garlic. Garlic is easy to grow here. We do that in pots or large pots, and let's say they do take time. I think onions and what was the other one? A couple of other things. Carrots take longer here than most people advertise. At least they do for me.
When you talk about from seed on the onions and garlic.
It's better to buy them at the nurseries. You'll see them in slips, and you'll get like a bundle. There might be 50 in it.
Yeah, there might be 50. Yeah.
Right. Onions and garlic are fun to grow. I mean, you put them in the ground.
Transplants.
You water them every day.
Oh, it's not a living transplant. You're planting the bulb. It's like bulb, I guess. You're planting the bulb. Sometimes it's a transplant bulb. Sometimes for an onion. Sometimes, most of the time, it's just looks like a little bitty green onion that they've dried out. And
What about multiplier onions?
what?
The multiplier onions, the green onions that.
Green onions. Yeah.
That's a green onion.
So can you put that in fall?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do you buy those? The ones that.
The nursery would be about the only place that I know of.
Okay.
Sometimes they're known as bunching onions.
Yeah,
Bunching.
They can be
You
multiplied.
may be able to get a seed for bunching onions. The other thing is when to pick an onion, and pick it when you want to eat it. That's what a lot of people do. But if you're going to grow a bunch, you wait till that top starts falling over, or before it seeds, or when it starts to seed, you break it over, and you want all that energy to go into the bulb. And the brown, I picked them when the top was actually brown, and then stored them, dried them out and stored them. You can look online on how to do that. Leeks, I don't know how many people grow leeks. I don't eat a lot of leeks, but it's like an onion. Lots of nitrogen. Turnips and mustards. I think we already talked about the mustards. Turnips? My wife's from Oklahoma, and she said turnips, yuck. But she started growing some turnips, and it doesn't take a lot, but you can do a lot with a turnip. You can put them in your mashed potatoes. You can make turnip chips. And the turnip greens work good too. But you can get really creative with a turnip, and it just gives a little variety. Radishes you can grow anytime, anywhere. Just throw out the seeds, and they'll propagate. Don't plant too many. Just plant a few, and then plant them a week or two apart. Because I ended up with a radish once about that long. I mean, it's just huge because I didn't know. I thought it was a weed out there growing. So yeah, radishes are they're a no-brainer. You just end up with too many.
One thing we'll be covering today are herbs. Transition our herbs into the fall garden. And while we have some of these standard perennial herbs, rosemary, oregano, that can be planted.
We don't want to listen to him. Lauren's going to talk about herbs.
So, some of your winter herbs are the ones that make it through, like rosemary. And you probably started wondering maybe earlier this summer why cilantro and parsley all of a sudden went up in price. They're sold here in the grocery stores this summer. They're cool season. So, parsley I would suggest buying by transplant. The seeds are very hard, they take a long time. Sometimes the germination ratio is not very good. But the plant itself, I don't know, $2, you only need one, but because they will reseed. Cilantro, I found out the first time I planted it many years ago that, the plant died on its own when it got really hot. And all of a sudden these little fuzzy things started popping up around September, October. It was the cilantro coming back. So, and does everybody know that the seeds of the cilantro is called coriander? Yeah, I didn't know that, so I was just passing that on. So when you see that, somewhat similar taste, a little bit different, but it's the same plant. As far as the others, mints will grow anywhere in the summertime. You need to do it in the shade. Particular mints I haven't had a whole lot of luck with. Because it has gotten too much sun. I don't know, some people have a knack. My grandmother said you had to steal it for it to work. But anyway, I think that for the most part, except for cilantro and parsley, the rest can grow through the year. Depending on how cold it gets in the winter. But my rosemary, I would say the rosemary, and Steve and I were talking about this earlier, because both of our plants at 2 different times all the same time. That was in about 10 years. So if that happens to you, that could be just its lifespan. Don't beat yourself up that something died. But that's not the question.
Mint is invasive, so if you're going to plant it, you want to put it in a pot or something, because otherwise your whole garden will be mint at some point.
Yeah, I leave mine in the too much that I get it.
Oh, yeah, that's
I've had basil seed out to cover.
Oh, lemon basil, forever. But and basil, if you see it, it's not on the list. I mean, it's a big old weenie. As soon as it gets cool, it's given up. It's moved on. But and I've never had regular, Genoa or broadleaf basil come back. The only way religiously coming back is my lemon basil. You don't need that so much. So the herbs are going to be pretty easy. One thing you might want to start thinking about is finding out some different type of herbs, experimenting, branching out. Because things, I don't know, August probably staying in the 100s at least for another week. Things are getting pushed back. Times are changing. So now that's what I meant by August is transition now. Prep your beds, get everything ready. Put the Amazon boxes down once you've cleaned your beds. Or even if you just want to crunch all the weeds, just put that Amazon box over, once it's flat, and just kill them and get them out. But, and I keep my herbs next to the house. My garden is not, so that way, I just walk out my door, get it for cooking.
Are there any that are more sensitive to better in container versus in the ground?
Is it what?
Container versus ground for those.
Oh, I have all of mine in containers, but
I have all mine in raised beds of some sort.
yeah, but I want to make. I don't know if you've ever seen those spiral kind of towers for herbs. I'm going to do that, but not even done it yet. But that's what I want to do. So right now I have mine in pots, Well, my rosemary I do have that in the ground just because it gets big. You know.
And some of these, like, I don't know what we've grown, parsley, cilantro, it work well as companion plants and help with critters in the garden. Will help keep critters.
I had somebody respond to an article I wrote one time, and they were upset that their rosemary was eaten by deer. Now, rosemary is sold as a deer deterrent, but as I told him, and whoever else, whatever, same with bunnies. If there's no food, they will eat rosemary because they're starving. But that is a deer deterrent. So, you know, if you're trying to keep some critters out of your garden, the rosemary is a great one because the scent is too strong for them. They don't like it. But I don't have a problem with deer. Not even bunnies.
What is your feeling about cover crops? So if you're going to do containers over the fall and winter, and you want to go into the cover crop on your garden just to regenerate the soil?
I think it's an awesome idea. I have found it at this point because we sold our house, so we're in a little transition period. So I've got a nice sized bed. I think it's tougher to do when you only have one bed because if you plan on doing fall gardening, because then you're kind of like don't have space. So when you like that.
She came in late.
Huh?
She came in late.
Well, okay. No, I was always late to my presentation. That's fine. But earlier we showed a screen that had 4 beds. And these beds I would recommend in a home gardener 4 feet wide by 6 to 8 feet long. And then, so you leave one bed go fallow, cover crop. That, and the cover crop is adding more nitrogen to our soil. So it really kind of depends how you can move it. Otherwise, like what I'm doing, compost, tear everything out, compost it. I haven't decided if I'm doing a fall garden this year, so. Sorry, I know, I'm sorry. But I've done it for many years.
Is there a recommendation for like clover versus you have a recommendation for our area?
A lot of people like legumes, different kinds of beans, whatever. Like I just go get some old bean seed. We talked about it earlier. I have planted. I went to Southern Seeds. I learned this in Africa. It's a whole other story. Sun hemp. It gets big in a hurry. So what we'll do, and what they do down there in Africa, where they're subsistence. I mean, they're doing this to live. I mean, they're growing food. That's what they eat. You can lay this down, it becomes a mulch, and then it'll eventually go back into the soil. I'm also growing buckwheat, and the thing about buckwheat, oh, this is starting to seed. Better knock that down. You can see the seeds on there. It's almost invasive, and it will choke out the weeds. So look online, look at our list on our slide. Go back to the beginning. We talk about it. Different grasses, clovers. I'm not a big fan of clover, but yeah, there's all kinds of cover crops. One year I think I used some beets and turnips and whatnot because I wanted to kind of wanted to go back in the soil and kind of break up the soil. So yeah, yes to cover crops. I do more than most people probably because I've got more garden I know what to do with. You know.
Yeah, using your old vegetables, like even like say now you're pulling up, I don't know how yours would have survived, but like your old zucchini, the leaves and whatever plants you might have, those can go down and then put mulch over them. I mean, you're going to put that nutrient, that nitrogen, basically anything that's green. I'm sure there's an exception, but anything that's green is going to have nitrogen. That's the chlorophyll. So it just depends kind of how laid back you want to get.
So another thing on herbs, and this is a whole other class that she's working on. I've given her some information on, and my wife's doing a lot of work in Zimbabwe and working with a group called Foundations for Farming that's fed. They just got someone to work for feeding 9 million people during the pandemic. So these people know what they're doing. And there's a whole list of the medicinal or, I don't know what the word is, values of a lot of these different herbs and teas and things and ways that they can help you. So when you get down the road and you get a little mature in this life, you can look into some of these things and figure out what you want to grow. Because there's a lot of value in herbs. I don't think we spend enough time on it. We need a class on herbs.
Is lavender one of those herbs that only survives for a certain amount, like yearly? Because I have trouble growing lavender.
Is it an annual versus a perennial? I think.
Yeah.
Well, in cooler, like I have a sister in Dallas.
Is it like a certain
Prolific.
place?
It's beautiful. What we have the problem here is because of the humidity. So almost what I recommend to people when they plant lavender, put it in a pot. It can grow with rosemary. They're the same. So if you want to put them in the same pot, but with lavender, I almost recommend putting white, like aquarium rocks or shells, something under it that will help reflect the sun and get the dew off of the leaves. It hates being wet, just like rosemary. So those two can go sit in a pot and complain with each other. The rest of the birds can all hang
I
out.
have trouble with rosemary too. That could be the reason. Okay.
Well, my rosemary plant lived to 10 years because I never watered it. It just got the drip off the roof.
I love it too much.
Yeah. Maybe that's what I did wrong.
So we're pretty much ending up, I wanted to leave two.
We got a couple more slides.
Oh, we do?
Well, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, we're not finished.
Well, go ahead. We're getting there.
I just wanted to leave everybody with basically two things. One, set yourself up for success. Get the best soil that you can afford. If you're making your own compost, mix it with another soil. I do not recommend using with fertilizer already in it. Control your own fertilization. Because everybody's like, well, a lot of people think, I remember talking to some clients at a garden area that I worked, and they were just like, I'm just organic. Okay, two things. Everybody's organic until they see their first bug. Too much of a good thing is not good. For instance, guess what else is organic? Snake bites, ant bites, wasp stings. Not good. So read your fertilizers. And the other thing was what Steve had brought up was on timing. Try and stay as close as possible to the recommended timing. I would think that, it might be a little bit change. That's why I've already said that August is transition. But as you'll see that most of the vegetables that are good for our area at this time of year are in September.
And not being an Aggie, I can't control the weather.
Go on.
and so don't let yourself get surprised. I mean, you will be surprised. You'll get an early freeze, a late freeze. It's going to happen. Don't get upset. Just be prepared to plant again. We got
What's your
100
best
questions.
soil
Let me cover
selection?
2 more slides and we'll open it up to questions. Big thing is, have fun and get your grandkids, get people involved. And we have to give it a commercial. Fort Bend Master Gardener Vegetable and Herb Sale will be here October 7th, 9 a.m. Get in line early. And then we go to about noon or till sold out. They sell out fairly quick. But October 7th is a big day. So it tells you when you're about supposed to plant, isn't it? October 7th. That's why we're selling plants then. Yeah, that's the, okay. And then if you don't like today's class, blame her. There's a little survey